So your revenue targets sometimes, they're not very valuable if you can't measure your pipeline coverage against them. And so here I want to show you how you can turn your pipeline coverage into a sort of a warning system. And then you'll be able to know, okay, should I spend more on marketing to adjust my lead flow, or I can dispatch reps differently, or I can have my sales team, follow up more, with existing leads. And so what I want to show here is how to create or how to calculate your expected revenue by the month. And then also we have a target, and then we have a coverage ratio, which is just the two divided by each other. I'm going to show you how to create this simple chart, which is just it's not two columns, but it's two axes. And then it's going to show here, which is the expected revenue, and then the line here is your coverage ratio. You could change this to, you could change the columns to be, the target instead of expected. And then down here, I want to show how much each of your techs or sales reps are contributing to the monthly, coverage ratio. Okay, so here are the data set. And if you want this data set, there's a link to download. You can just click it. If you can't find it, shoot me an email. And so this is a pretty basic data set. I recreated the data, but I have several HVAC clients and I help them, do this type of stuff. And so you should be able to have this or recreate this in, Service Titan, whatever software you're using. Or, it's not as efficient, but you could also manually enter this data, because at the end of the day, lead ID, lead source, opportunity ID, date, lead source, what type of customer is it, what type of job, territory, sales rep, what part of the stage are we in. And then from there, we have sort of an estimated revenue on the project, and then we have a probability of what we're going to close. And again, these are random numbers, but you can, attribute some value. And then also the status. So we only want to do this on open, nothing on closed deals. And then the only thing really we need to calculate on this, and whenever you do stuff like this with like raw data, it's best to do your calculations off to the side, like to the right, usually. You can do it to the left as well, but usually the right's easier. And so from there, and the reason why you want to do that is because as you add more data, at the bottom, say every month, every week, however often you're doing this, if you put the formulas like in the middle of the data set, then you got to partition your data and, okay, copy and paste this over here, and then copy and paste this over here if your formula's in the middle. But if it's just off to the right, then you can just copy paste, and because this is in a table, everything will automatically update. And so the first thing, and the only formula on this sheet we have to calculate, is the expected month from the close date. So we have an expected close date here, and so equals the text function expected close date, comma, and then around quotations with 4 M's, and then you can see we get the months here. So that's how you can do it in your own data set. Again, if you don't have something like this and you just want to learn how to do this, download this file, and it's all taken. Like, it's already there, but you can of course redo it just to make sure it's working for you. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is we need to get a list of months here, and then we can start to calculate the expected, the target, and the coverage ratio. And so the way we do that, we have a monthly target, again, made up numbers, but this is the monthly target. And so the starting point, what we can do is just type in month, and then underneath it, type in the word January, drag that down to December. Okay, and the next thing we want is we have expected, and then we have target, and then we have pipeline coverage ratio, but I'll just call it coverage. Okay, so how do we calculate the expected amount? And so what we did, or what we saw earlier here, is we saw that we have an estimated revenue, which is just the deal size, weighted pipeline revenue, which is just the estimated revenue times the probability. And then you'll get this. And again, so we want to calculate this again only on open deals. We need to make sure that this is open because we don't want closed deals. And so the expected revenue is going to be the SUMIFS. So sum that calculated column, the deal size times the probability, sum that column if the month is January, right? So sum if. And so equals SUMIFS. And then you have weighted pipeline value here, comma. And then the next is the criteria range, and we're doing the month, right? So we need to do month here, comma, and I just know the cell is B3, right? It's right here. The reason why I type it is because the formula is weird. Like, it just blocks stuff. And so, yeah, so it's that. If you format it real quick as a dollar, Control-Shift-4, and then you can double click down. Oh, sorry, I forgot one more thing, right? We have to make sure it's open. So we want to make sure that the status, comma, with quotations because it's text, is open. And you can see it brings it down. And then for target, I'll teach you a simple formula. I mean, of course, you could just copy and paste, but there's a formula called VLOOKUP. I'm sure you've seen it before. There's VLOOKUP, XLOOKUP, HLOOKUP, index match. Like, there's a lot of ways to do this, but VLOOKUP is pretty straightforward. So the first thing we need to do is VLOOKUP, and then we want to look up cell B3, right? So we want to find January here, and we want to bring over what's in the second column, right? So this is the first column. This is the second column. So you can see B3, if you remember from the other sheet, is January, and then the monthly target, which is this tab here, column BC, comma, and then 2 because it's the second column. The month is the first column, and the revenue target is the second column. And then comma, and then 0. But 0 is false, meaning I want an exact match. Like in this example, January is going to be, like a close match, but like sometimes with data, you don't have something so similar. You could have things that are a little bit off, meaning, JAN could be JUN, and it might not match exactly. And so we want an exact match, which is you can type in false or you could type the number 0. And so you can see we have this. Again, you can format it like that and then just double click down. And then the coverage is, pretty straightforward. Expected divided by target. So, you're 96% of the way there, say 3.5% off. And then I'll press Control-Shift-5 to format it as a percentage. And so the next thing we want is, if you remember, we want to create that chart, right? The chart with the secondary axis. This is called a combo chart because it's a combination of two different things, meaning it's a column and a line. So it's a combo chart. So we can just highlight this and then hold down the Control key and then highlight coverage and include the word coverage. And then insert recommended charts, and it's right here on the top. But if for some reason it isn't, just go to all charts, combo, and then you can see, right, combo chart, but the problem is that the red line is on the bottom. And the reason for this is because there's only one axis. So in other words, 0.96, right, 96% is on the same axis as 364,000, and it actually has a maximum of 700,000. So we don't want that. So we want a secondary axis. And now you can see over here on the right side, we have a secondary axis. And so the red line is using the axis here on the right side, and the blue columns are using the y-axis. And then you can click OK. And then you got that here. And so we're good here. And then the next thing we can do real quick is just change this. So we can just call this, say, pipeline coverage ratio by month. Okay. So if you want to add the values, you can just, if you click on the crosshair, you can see, but it's too noisy, right? So it's better probably either just to choose one, or it's sort of a lot of legwork. You can click on, each one and sort of move it out of the way, to make it more visible. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove that, and then I'll just remove everything, and then click on the line, and then data labels. And then now you can see, you can see a little bit easier. And again, if some things are getting in the way, you can sort of click, right? Okay, so we have that pretty straightforward chart. This is the main KPI, the main visualization. But as a manager of the sales department, you're going to want to get more granular. You're going to want to see that the person level. I mean, you could even do it, at the system level, right? Like, meaning, do we have that data here? Yeah. So like at the job type level, right? So you can see like how much pipeline coverage is, commercial retrofit adding for the month of January. And then if you learn how to do what I'm about to show you, then you can just change the variable. Instead of doing it by salesperson and month, you could do it by that type, the job and month. And so we want to create a heat map just like this, and we'll have the months here, and then we'll have the list of the reps here, and then we'll see how much they're adding individually, and then we'll also see how much they're adding at an annual level. And we don't really have to add this because it's pretty much, everybody's pretty much bringing in 1/5. But by month, you can see that there's definitely some variation between, the people. And then for this, we could do this too, but this here is the same as this. And so I just added it just to show the heat map. But what I'll do now is I'll just create this section here. And so we need, again, month, January. And of course, you could just copy and paste, this above or however you want to do it. But just to show you that, to drag down how to do that. Okay, and then across the row here, what we want is we want a unique list of the sales rep here. So, we don't want Jordan Rivera 3 times. And so the way you do that is with the unique function, equals unique. And I'll show you a little trick as well once I do this. So here you have, highlighting in the table, sales rep name. And so you have a list here. But the next thing we want to do is we want to put this in alphabetical order, right? And so from here, around the function, you can just type in the function sort. And then you can wrap this. And then you're good. And so what we want to do from here is we want to remove the formula by copying and pasting, by pressing Control C and Control Shift V. You need to add Shift and it'll remove the formula. And then we want to put this up top here, but I'm not going to do it this way because it's annoying. And what I'm going to do is I'll just copy this and then I'll right click here in the cell C21 next to the month and then ST. So paste special transpose, that's what ST stands for. And then I'll delete this. Okay, so now what we have to do is we have to calculate a ratio, right? And so that ratio, if you think about it, a ratio is just a fraction, essentially, right? And so we need the numerator and I think my camera just went out, the numerator and the denominator. And so for the numerator, what we need is we need the weighted pipeline value, like that ratio, right? Like $10,000 job, 70%, likelihood of closing, so it's worth 7,000. We need that value based off of the month of, January, February, March, off of an open status and off of, the sales rep's name. And then also from there, we need to divide it by these numbers up here, or the target numbers, because we want to see how much they're bringing in versus, the monthly targets. And so I'll show you how to calculate all that. So let me just do the numerator real quick. So again, SUMIFS, we're going to do the table, and then we have, what was it called? I can go over to the table, but I just like doing it this way. Weighted pipeline value. Let me make sure, because is it weighted pipeline value or is it, yep, so perfect. It's not estimated revenue, perfect. So weighted pipeline value. And then from there, remember, we want to make sure that this is open. And then from here, we need the sales rep name, comma. And then from here, it's going to be, starting point, Alex Martinez, comma. And then table, what did we call it at the end? It's the very last column, I think month, expected month. Expected month, comma, here, right? And so now we need to see, okay, so we got 43,000, but we need to see what 43,000 for the month of January is what percentage of 377, right? So we're going to divide each person just to see the sales rep's contribution towards the monthly target. And so the way we do that is we need to divide this by, if you remember, the VLOOKUP, right? So we want to look up the January in the monthly target, those two numbers, or those two columns, and then the second column, right? Column C, and then again 0, and then you can close your bracket. I messed up somewhere. I need to type in the month, B22. We all make mistakes. I make a lot of them. But the benefit is I can catch them pretty fast. And Excel lets you know. It's like, hey, there's an error. Okay, so we have 11% here. And what we want to do now is we want to be able to drag this over and drag this down. But what you'll notice right off the bat is something isn't making sense. It's like, why are we getting an error? And what this is called is absolute referencing. Relative referencing, meaning as you drag this over, everything is relative. So you can see Alex Martinez here And then here it goes to Brett Johnson, and that's perfect. But the thing you'll notice is that you can sort of see the red line right here, and that's highlighting cell B22, which you can see here. But if you go here, it turns into C22, right? It goes over 1, and we don't want that. So we need to tell Excel, like, hey, as I drag this over, like as I drag this left to right, I want these to change, but I don't want this to change. And also, as I drag this down, I don't want this to change, but I do want January to become February. Because you can see right now with this, it's surging for 11%. Right, in the Alex Martinez column, in the sales rep column, which doesn't make sense. And so, yeah, fortunately, there's a way to tell Excel to do that. And so what we need to do is we need to put a $sign. So anywhere you want to lock the column, meaning you want to drag down and you want this to change, which is locking the column, because as you go left to right or right to left, you don't want it to change. And so anywhere you see the red in the formula, but it will change, so you just need to make sure that it's the right reference. You need to put a $sign before the column. In Excel, letters are columns and numbers are rows. And then anywhere you see the blue, which again, it could change, but in this example, it's blue, put the $sign before the number and after the letter. So before the row and after the column. As to where with this one, it's just before the column. Okay, so we have that. If you press Control-Shift-5, it'll make it a percentage. And then now we want to drag it over, but there's still an error. And that error is because of the columns changing. So weighted pipeline value becomes appointment date, right? So that doesn't work. But that's just the nature of tables. And there's an easy fix. Just copy this and then find your range and then paste it. And then everything breaks because I am wrong. So let's see what's going on here. I didn't change. Yeah, okay, yeah, that's interesting. So you can see here I didn't lock this. BC becomes CD. And that is not what we want. But as you drag it down, the column doesn't change, right? So here, you want a $sign before both, but if you press F4, it'll do that as well. And F4 cycles through all of these. So you could do F4 here. So F4 like this, and it'll cycle through. But you could also do it here. I just type in the $sign because it's saves some clicks, essentially. Okay, so Control-Shift-5 to format, copy, and then paste. And now everything is working as expected. Okay, so the last thing I want to do is I want to show you how to. So first, I guess we want to do a total. So I'll show you another little trick. Total is if you just highlight this and then press Alt and the equals key, then it'll automatically sum. It's the auto sum functionality. And then from here, we can just highlight this. But we could also do it at the row level. Because if we do it this way, highlight, conditional formatting, color scales, green high, red low, it doesn't paint the picture that you're looking for. It's like, okay, like Evan Brooks for September was high, but it's like I don't want to see it that way. I want to see it this way at the row level. So highlight the row, not including the total, go to home, conditional formatting, color scales, and then you can see here green is high and red is low. In other scenarios, you might want red to be high, like cost, right, expenses. And then, but here we want green to be high. And then instead of having to do it, again, conditional formatting, color scales, green high, instead of having to do that, I guess 10 more times, just highlight this, go to home, and you'll see the conditional formatter here, or sorry, the format painter, and just double click. And then now click the Alex Martinez value for each one, and then it'll automatically update or automatically conditional format, just like that. And then I'll press escape, and then here I can do the same thing. Conditional formatting, color scales green. And then I don't know if you want to maybe insert a column just to make it look a little bit different, just to give you a little bit of space in the break. And so, yeah, so that's essentially how you can create this, because, calculating your coverage ratio is going to help right? Like your numbers is going to help your forecasting and how accurate it is. And so it also helps you know which levers to pull. But anyways, that's sort of all I got for this one. If you have any questions on this stuff, just shoot me an email, questions@databoards.io. If you want this file, there's a link to download it, but if you can't find it for some reason, just shoot me an email. But just say, hey, Ryan, can you shoot over the pipeline coverage ratio file? Just so I know which one you're wanting. And also the final thing is with this data set, if you need some help creating this or just want to hop on a call just to discuss your current methods, there's also a link to hop on my calendar, or you can shoot me an email. But if none of that is interesting to you, or if you don't need the file, or you don't have any questions, then I'll see you in future videos.